Hello, my name is Nam,
And I'm Jeremy.
and we are here today to teach you how to play Android Netrunner.
Netrunner is an asymmetric card game, which basically means that both sides play completely differently. The setting of the game is a cyberpunk future. Cyberpunk future is regularly known from William Gibson's Neuromancer, Blade Runner, and the anime Ghost in the Shell. If you haven't seen any of these, you really should.
They're awesome, but if you don't, that's okay. If you like strategic card games, this is actually a pretty interesting card game.
Imagine a future where businesses rule more than the government in general. You have huge mega corporations that are looking to advance their agendas. And then you have people that are breaking the law and hacking into those systems, into the corporations, to try to take them down. And we're talking cyberspace in a pure, virtual reality-esque, you jack into cyberspace and hack into systems.
What we want to go over today is basic gameplay, how the corporation plays, how the runner plays, and how they interact. And hopefully you'll understand how to play after this video.
Every game has a goal. In this game, both sides have the same goal for winning the game. If either side scores 7 points, they win the game. But there's also a way for each side to lose the game. The corporation, business has to keep moving. So, their deck is known as R&D, or research development. If they ever have to go and draw a card from R&D and there's no card there, they instantly lose the game. Whereas the runner, physically plugging yourself into cyberspace can be very dangerous, and damage can be done to them. Damage is determined by discarding cards. If the runner ever has to discard more cards than they have in hand, they have flatlined, died at their terminal, and instantly lost the game. Here's a game in progress. The card in my hand is kind of the key and central point of the game. It's an agenda card. It's different from every other card because it has its number at the top right hand of the corner instead of the left hand corner. That's the advancement difficulty. All other cards will have a number in the upper left-hand corner because they have a credit cost as opposed to a difficulty. Corporation start with the agendas in their deck.
Unlike the runner, who has no agenda cards in their deck.
Then further down on the left is the number of agenda points that card is worth. That is victory points. Getting to 7 points of those scored wins you the game. Now, for the corporation, they're much harder to score the agenda, but as a bonus, you do get the extra ability that's just explained in the card. Whereas the runner, all the runner has to do is access this card once. They instantly steal it, but they don't get the bonus that is listed at the bottom. But that's a basic agenda card. Let's continue forward and we'll look at the runner setup for the game.
So as the runner, you are usually represented by a specific identity. This particular identity tells the game that I would be represented by Gabriel Santiago. There's various card text that pretty much denotes his special ability compared to other runners. And there's certain numbers on the cards. We'll talk about those later. This is what the typical runner setup would look like. So your identity is on the table. This is your draw deck, which is also called the stack. This is your discard pile, which is called the heap. And this is your grip, which is your hand. The other things that you also have are a few rows of different types of cards. Usually, this is your resource row. As the runner, you'll have access to various resources. And this is the row in which your resource cards go. They usually represent different things that you have that help you out, like a job, so you can get more money faster, or various things that you have to help you, like physical items. This is your hardware row. So as a runner, you'll have a rig set up, and the types of things that you have in there are various pieces of hardware. They'll help augment what you have to help you run against the corporation. This row is the row of programs that you have installed. And your programs take up a certain amount of memory. What they call MU in this game stands for memory units. Now, if you take a look on a specific program card, there's a cost associated with it in credits just so that you can have it. But then there's also a requirement or a prerequisite of memory units that it takes up. Each game, the runner starts with 4 units of MU, and for every card on the table that takes up a piece of MU, it takes that up. When you install a program, you may trash any previous programs that you already had installed. And you must do this sometimes when you would exceed the memory unit capacity. But this is purely an optional thing that you may do. But this only applies to programs on the runner side. You cannot willingly do that for hardware or resources.
The corporation setup is much more complex because this isn't just the tools they use. This represents the actual computer setup that is hooked to cyberspace. Each row of cards is considered a separate computer server, basically. There are, we'll push these aside, there are 3 central servers for the corporation. There is HQ server. You put your identity card, just like the runner, they have an identity for this side, right here, and that represents your hand, which is headquarters HQ. This is research and development, or R&D. This is your draw deck. Your discard deck is known as archives. Now, you can add as many remote servers as you wish. Remote servers are added to the side here, and every single set of remote servers has a setup in front of it. Now, I go like this, and you'll see cards sideways here, because how do you protect these servers? You protect these servers with cards known as ICE. They are printed horizontally. Different cards that are installed in servers. You have the ICE, which protects things. Then you also have agenda cards. Agenda cards are put in a remote server. They can't have another agenda in there sharing any space. They take up the whole server, and then the ICE is outside. There is also cards called assets. They also need to have their own remote server. They can't be in there with an agenda. They take up the whole server. Finally, there are cards upgrades. Upgrades influence the entire server. They usually give the ICE some benefit, or the card that's installed in the server some benefit. You can have as many upgrades as you want in a server. So this server here could potentially have this many cards in it. Now you'll notice all of the runner cards over there are face up. For the corporation, when they install cards, they install them face down, and then they are rezzed.
Quick terminology interjection. Installed cards are just cards that are on the table, in play. When a card is installed, it is usually installed face down. Rezzed means that the corporation player has paid the cost of the card, and it is actually face up and active.
Here you're introduced to a large aspect of the game, which is hidden information. And you're going to learn more about that when we cover the actions that the corporations can take next. Turn structure in this game works differently for corporation runners. We're going to start with corporation. First, any beginning of turn actions go off. Then the corporation is required to draw a card. They always draw a card, but then they get 3 actions to do after that card draw. The actions you can do, there is a nice little card that comes with the game. First action you do is draw a card from R&D. So that means you can draw another card. So your turn could potentially be draw your required card, draw 3 more cards. Then your turn's done. Second action you can potentially do is take one credit of money from the bank. You should have all your tokens nearby from the bank. Take 1 from the bank, add it to your personal pool. Third action you can take is install an agenda, asset, upgrade, or piece of ICE. Anytime you install a card, you're set to the limitations I put forth in the player setup area. You can't have, if you have an agenda here, you can't have another agenda there. But what you can do is, whenever you install an agenda or an asset in a server, you have the option of overwriting the program currently there. So I could install this here and trash the other card. If this was face up, it goes into the archives or trash face up. If it was face down, it goes into the archives face down and sideways. And that's how you install assets or agendas.
One thing to note, you cannot have both an asset and an agenda on the same remote server. You can only have one of either one.
Now, say you have an agenda in your hand and you want to install it but not overwrite anything there. You can always add more remote servers. And that can be done with either the asset/agenda or the ICE that's protecting it. So you could potentially have an empty server. Installing ICE is just like installing agendas. You just take the card, face down, put it into play. All cards, when you install them, go face down. The only requirement for ICE is to additionally protect a server costs you extra. For instance, say this HQ server had 1 piece of ICE. To add another piece of ICE, I have to pay 1 credit for every piece of ICE already in there. So if there's 1 piece of ICE there, I pay 1 to the bank. If I want to put a 3rd piece of ICE in, I have to pay 2 credits to the bank. It gets more expensive, but then this server has additional protection. Rather than pay the extra cost, for instance, if I want a piece of ICE in this server, there's already 1 there, I would have to pay 1 credit to the bank. Rather than paying that 1 credit, I do have the option, when installing a piece of ICE, to trash any number of the ICE in that server. It can be important because when you trash it, it moves down into this slot, but there's no more ICE there as I'm installing it. Don't have to pay that cost. Also, another thing to note with ICE is you always install to the outermost position. You do not have the option of installing under ICE already there. It must go on the outside. Therefore, if you want it to be further down, you would have to trash other programs for it to get to that location. Upgrade. Upgrades can be installed on any server as additional cards. When you install them, they're face down. Cards installed, when they're first installed, are not active until they are rezzed and active. So when they're face up, their effect is active. If they're face down, their effect is not active. So keep that in mind, but multiple upgrades can go in a server. Upgrades can go into your central servers, but they don't go in the actual server with the objects that are already there. You're going to put them in what's called the root of the server. So say I wanted to upgrade my HQ, I would put it down below here in the root of the server. Again, face down, not active. If I res it, it is now active. That is installing cards. The next action you can do is play an operation. Operations are cards that don't go into play. You play the card, pay the cost, and do what it says. And then the card goes to the archives. For instance, this card is called Hedge Fund. It costs 5, so you'd play it, pay 5 to the bank, and then gain 9 money. You would gain 9 back. And then you play it, you put it in your trash when it's done. The next action is advance a card. This is both an action and costs some money. Agendas mentioned before have an advancement cost in the corner. This card is called AutoScript Pilot Program. It's 3 difficulty. So that doesn't mean it costs 3 to play. You install it in the server, and then as an action you take 1 credit, you can flip it over and put it on the card, and that's an advancement token. Once there are enough advancement tokens that it is equal or above the difficulty score on the card, you score the agenda on your turn. You can't score an agenda on the runner's turn, only on your turn. That can apply to certain cards which allow you to add advancement counters while the runner is running the server. Keep in mind, for advancing, not all cards can be advanced. Agendas are natively advanceable, and then there are some cards which will state this card can be advanced. If it can be advanced, you can add advancement tokens. But for instance, this ice does not say that, so adding an advancement token to that would not be a legal action, and it wouldn't do anything to add to the card anyways. That is advancing a card. Next action is 3 actions, 3 clicks, purge virus counters. The runner may be utilizing virus counters to kick off certain effects or have it depends on the card. You'll use one of the general tokens to denote that. The cards may be on the runner's side, the cards may be on your side. But if you take 3 actions, which is your entire turn as the corporation, you can clear all tokens from the table. It can be very effective against a runner who's using virus tokens. And finally, an action and 2 money. Trash 1 resource if the runner is tagged. Certain effects may cause the runner to be tagged. Think of this as a GPS location on their home base, or you know where their money's coming from, or that kind of thing. If the runner is tagged from an effect, you have tokens to denote that. If they're tagged from an effect, you can spend 2 money and an action to trash one of their resources. Hardware and programs are protected, but resources are not. So if I had 6 money and he had 3 resources, I could potentially take all 3 of my actions and trash all 3 of his resources. There are also cards that use tagged and as an effect, play only if the runner is tagged. Finally, I mentioned the cards are face down, they're not active. They're installed, but not active. To res a card, you have to pay the cost in the corner. Resing can happen for cards that are non-ice. All assets, upgrades, any cards like those. You can do it almost at any time. The general rule of thumb is after someone else's action. You pay the cost in the corner, you flip the card over, and it is active. For instance, this card is Melange Mining Corp. Costs 1, and it's 3 clicks, gain 7 money. So similar to virus counters, I'm taking my whole turn to do it, but it's 7 money rather than 3 money it would be if I did those normally, taking 1 bit from the bank. I could potentially res this at the end of the runner's turn and prior to the beginning of my turn. So I res it, I draw my card, and then I take my 3 actions. I hadn't wasted that money if the runner was able to do something to it while it was face down. That's something to consider. Ice is only resed when the runner encounters it, which we'll go over encountering when we cover a runner's run.
Okay, so now we're going to go over the turn structure of the runner. It is somewhat similar to the corporation in that it has a number of actions in which you can choose what to do. However, the corporation had 3 free actions and the 1 forced draw at the beginning of its turn. The runner has 4 actions to use. They're called clicks in Android Netrunner. You can use all 4 of them to do whatever you would like, so long as the runner can perform those actions. Now, on the runner actions card, this lists all of the normal actions that the runner can take. The first one being draw a card from your stack. So you could just use one action to draw. You can use one action to gain 1 credit as money and add it to your credit pool. You can use one action to install a program, piece of hardware, or resource, which are the 3 different types of cards that you have in your rig as the runner. Now, unlike the corporation, whenever you install one of these cards, you must pay the cost immediately. You cannot play them face down. They must go on the table face up. So let's say I would like to install Crypsis. This is an icebreaker program that costs 5. So I would have to pay 5 to the bank to install this program. If you happen to attempt to install something in which would take your memory unit consumption over your maximum, then you actually have to trash cards until it brings you down to that maximum. So in this example, this is Corroder, it costs 1 memory unit. This is Ninja, it costs 1 memory unit. This is Magnum Opus, and it costs 2 memory units. Now that reaches your maximum of 4, but let's say I wanted to install Crypsis as well. I'd attempt to play Crypsis, and then we would do a check. Oh look, there's 5 memory units. In order for this to come into play, I would need to actually trash one of these and put it in my heap before he could actually come in. So let's say I didn't want this. So I could just trash Ninja. I don't know anybody who could trash ninjas into my heap. And then I would have these as my programs. To install hardware, it's a similar process. You would just have to pay the cost and then put it into play. And same thing with resources. This one would cost 3, you would pay 3 to the bank, you put it in play. Unlike some other cards, there are some cards that might have a cost of 0. They don't cost you any money, but it still requires that you have that action to spend in order to put it into play.
Hey Nam, isn't that card Wildside unique?
What are unique cards?
Okay,
Unique cards have a diamond next to the name.
On a particular card, if there's a diamond next to the name, that indicates that the card is unique. You can only have one of them in play. Now that won't prevent you from attempting to play another one, but if you happen to get a second one in play, you must trash one of them. That means if you ever had more than one in play, you would have to trash enough of them so that you would only have one in play. Wildside is one of them. You could also use an action to play an event. Now an event card is a card that you use from your hand, resolve the effect, and then you put into your heap, your discard pile. For example, this card is called Easy Mark. It is an event where you just gain 3 credits. So you'd play this card, you would get 3 credits. Now keep in mind, you would still have to pay any cost that is in the upper left hand corner. Since Easy Mark has 0, you would just use your one action to gain 3 credits. Some other events, for example, this you would have to pay 2, and then you would resolve the effect, and then you put it into your heap.
What about nested effects on an event card, Nam?
Well, nested effects. This card that I just showed you, Inside Job, it actually says, make a run, bypass the first piece of ice encountered during this run. You're playing this event. There's another action that the runner can take called making a run. But this doesn't use 2 actions for you to play this and make a run. You only make a run as part of this card's resolution of the effect. Keep in mind your actions when you play your events. As another runner action, you can use one action and pay 2 credits to remove 1 tag. As Jeremy had explained earlier, these are things to indicate that the corporation knows where you are or how to find you or how to mess with you. So whenever you get them, you probably want to get rid of them sooner rather than later. You certainly don't want to leave them there all game. But sometimes it is actually acceptable to keep your tag, or if you have multiple, it might not hurt to have more. So don't let it deter you from making actions that might win you the game later. Final action that the runner can take is make a run. When the runner makes a run, you will pretty much have all of your programs at your disposal ready to go, and you choose which aspect of the corporation to run on.
You choose a server to make your run. A run is a runner's attempt to infiltrate one of the corporation's server. So for the runner to make a run, they just use an action and choose the server they want to run on. The main aspects of a run are encountering ice, and then accessing cards, that is if they got through all the ice. We're going to go over accessing first for the instance of making a run on an unprotected or non-ICE server. All right, as we can see on this corporation board, they have an archives with face-down cards. They have the R&D, the headquarters with 2 cards in hand, and then this is a remote server. None of them are protected. They have no ICE. So we're going to go through what would happen if the runner runs each one in accessing those cards.
So let's say I would like to make a run on the archives.
Archives are a special case. Archives, any cards that are face down and all cards that are face up, the runner gets to look at all of them. If any of them were agendas, he immediately takes it and steals it and scores it. So there are no agendas in this set, but if this card here was in there, this is AutoScript Pilot Program again. It's 2 agenda points. If the runner saw that and touched it,
I found this agenda. I
boom.
score 2 agenda points.
After everything has been revealed, everything remains face up in the archive, so the runner knows that he's already accessed those cards. That is archives. Next,
I would like to do a run on R&D.
R&D. The runner accesses cards by R&D by taking the top card of the deck and looking at it. The key thing is the corporation does not see this card, only the runner. If the runner gets an agenda,
It's an agenda, then I would actually score the points, so I would get 3 agenda points.
however, say the card is not an agenda. There is options for the runner. Some cards, mainly assets, have down in the bottom right-hand corner a little trash can with a number. The runner has the option of trashing that card. They pay the amount in the trash can, and then the card would go to the archives, denying the corporation access to that card on their next draw step.
So, I don't want you to have this. I'm going to pay 0 to trash this.
That's a nice cheap discard there. That is R&D. Headquarters.
I would like to make a run on HQ.
There's no ice protecting it. He's going to access 1 random card from my hand. You have the opportunity to randomize the cards, and then the runner's going to select one.
Oh no, which one do I pick? I would like to access this one.
All right. The card he has accessed is a piece of ice. Now, ice doesn't have a trash cost in the corner. Therefore, the only thing the runner can do is return that card to my hand.
However, it does grant a little bit of additional information of what is in the corporation's hand in that case.
If he had selected one of the other 2 cards in my hand, it would have had a trash cost, and he therefore could have sent it to the archives. That is HQ. Finally, a remote server.
I would like to make a run on this remote server.
There's no ice protecting this remote server. However, as you can see, there are 2 cards in this remote server. He's going to access both of them. However, there are 2 cards in this remote server. This implies there is either 1 agenda or asset and 1 upgrade, or potentially 2 upgrades. So he's going to access them one at a time. He chooses, would you like the one with the advancement counters or the one without?
I will begin by accessing the one with the advancement counter.
The one with advancement counters is revealed to the runner. It is an agenda.
It's an agenda, so I score 2 agenda points.
Then he would have to, after that, access this card as well, which is an upgrade. He has the option of trashing it then.
It has a trash cost of 2. I don't like the effect, so what I'm going to do is pay 2 credits to the bank, and I'm now able to put this in his archive, in his discard pile.
Now keep in mind, uniced servers are the most simplistic version of a run in the game. So more realistically, you'll have something that looks more like this. These are ice protecting the servers. Right now there's 3 ice protecting R&D and 1 ice protecting this single remote server. So what we're going to do is go over how the progression of everything in that run occurs. For an extra bit of spice on this one, we're going to assume that the runner played an event card. What event card are you going to play now?
Okay, as the runner, I would like to play this event card. It's called the Maker's Eye. Make a run on R&D. If successful, access 2 additional cards from R&D. So in order for me to play this event card, I will first need to pay 2 credits. And now, as part of the embedded action for the resolution of this card is I make a run on R&D, which is his deck.
The first thing that happens when he's making a run on an ice server, he's going to approach the first ice.
I approach the first ice.
As he approaches it, I have the option of rezzing this piece of ice. If I want to res it, I would pay the cost up in the upper left-hand corner. I can also, keep in mind the corporation at any time can look at any of their face-down cards, so you might want to plan out how you're spending your money.
So now I ask, do you res this first piece of ice?
I am going to res it. The card is called Hunter. It has a res cost of 1. I pay 1 to the bank. It is a Sentry piece of ice. There are 3 basic types of ice: Sentry, Barrier, and Code Gate. It has a strength of 4. In the white oval bubble in the corner is the strength of the ice. And then there is one subroutine. It's verified by a almost an enter key button or an arrow. This card says trace 3. If successful, give the runner 1 tag. Now, once he encounters this ice, once I res it, he is encountering it. If he's encountering this ice, that subroutine is going to happen. But with his programs, he may be able to break it and prevent that from happening. So his 2 options are breaking it or letting it happen. But it's going to do one of those 2 things. So if he cannot break it, it's going to occur. Now, one of his programs is called Ninja. It is a break Sentry subroutine. Therefore, he could break this program. Now, the strength on the breaker is 0. The strength on the ice is 4. In order for a breaker to interact with ice, the strength has to be equal or greater. This breaker has a trick, though, as many breakers do. It can increase its strength. When a breaker increases its strength, it will increase that strength for the length of that ice. So after this ice is done, this strength will go back to its default of 0. But what he can do is, right here, as his second option on this card, is 3 money plus 5 strength. So Nam, would you like to increase the strength of Ninja?
I will say I would not like to increase the strength of Ninja.
So he's going to save his money, not use this breaker to break the program. So the strength on that's 0, so it can't interact. But this trace is going to occur. Here's a key part about ice. If this were to end the run, if there was a subroutine that said end the run, if that occurs, the run immediately ends. If there's no end the run subroutine, then the run can still continue after that event happens. So this event is something new that hasn't been on this video yet. It's called a trace. It's basically the corporation is going to run a trace to try to catch the runner. If we look at it, the trace is a 3 base. So the idea is my trace has a power of 3. I'm going to be able to increase that strength, but first let's compare it against the runner's link, which is the opposing stat. That stat is determined, well, Nam, why don't you describe where link is determined from?
Okay. Typically, you may or may not start off with a link value on your identity card. Now, I happen to be represented by Gabriel Santiago. The link value on him is actually 0, so he starts with none. So now you check all of your other cards, hardware and resources, to determine whether you have any more link. So the only card that I have on the table is access to Global Sec, which is +1 link. So my value of link that I have is just 1.
So it's starting right now. It's trace 3 versus link 1. We're going to increase those values. The increasing goes, the corporation bids an amount, which is pays an amount to the bank to increase that value. Then the runner pays an amount to increase his value. If the runner's link value equals or exceeds the trace value, the trace doesn't occur. If the corporation's is higher, the trace occurs. So let's say it's trace 3. I'm going to bid 2. I bid 2 and pay to the bank, so now it's trace 5. The runner can respond.
Okay. Now, let's say I did not want this tag. Let's say somehow having a tag would really not benefit me. I could pay 4 to increase my link from 1 to 5.
And tie it. So the value's been tied, no tag is given.
However, if I did not want to and wanted to save my money, I could just receive the tag and just, since the piece of ice does not end the run, it would not stop me from running down the rest of the server.
Now that the events on this card have occurred, the runner has passed this ice and is now in this middle section. The runner has an option of jacking out, which is ending the run voluntarily. Say, spend too much money on that ice, say, oh man, things are in trouble, I'm going to jump out. So the runner can jack out here. The only time the runner can't jack out is before approaching their first piece of ice, but that just says, don't make a run if you're going to immediately jack out.
Just for clarity's sake, I took the tag last ice.
Got it. Nam is tagged.
Okay.
So Nam, would you like to jack out for the second piece of ice?
No.
So now I can look at the next card, and I'm going to spend 4 money to res it. Now, for instance, as you see, I've resed both of them so far. I don't have to res it. If I think this ice is better and it costs more, this ice is going to cost so much that if I res this one, I won't have enough money left over to res this one. And I'm going to spend 4 to res Noral Katana. It is also a Sentry. We're seeing the same types of ice here. Cost 4, strength of 3. it has one subroutine, do 3 net damage. There's no end of the run, so the runner could potentially not break this, just go through it, that would occur, and he would still go to the next ice. However, 3 net damage is a lot worse than 1 tag.
Jeremy, let's go over the 3 different types of damage that there are.
It's a good idea. There are 3 types of damage. All damage will cause you to discard cards. Keep in mind the discard is random. It's very similar to how the runner accessed the headquarters cards from Corporation. The Corporation is going to randomly take as many cards from the runner to represent that damage. For net damage, I would take 3 random cards and put them in his discard. For meat damage, same thing. I would take 3 random cards and put them in his discard. For brain damage, I would take 3 random cards, but there's something worse. The runner's going to get what's called a brain damage token. This means their max hand size is reduced by 1. One thing we didn't go over earlier is at the end of your turn, your hand has to be resolved down to its max hand size. Standard max hand size is 5. So if I had 6 cards in hand, say I had 5, you can draw above your limit. Say I drew up to 6. At the end of my turn, I have to discard 1 down into either my archives or the heap for the runner. With every brain damage token you have 1 less hand size. So if you had 3 tokens, you would have to discard down to 2 cards at the end of every turn. So brain damage is bad. Meat damage and net damage, from what the example we gave, are exactly the same except for cards that reference them. There are cards that can prevent damage or turn it to something different, or if you get so much net damage, something happens. There's all kinds of various effects. But if it says meat damage, you can't use it to absorb net damage. It's basically just a flavor difference.
I'm encountering this ice. It's a sentry. What would I like to do? Its strength is 3. My ninja program can break sentry ices, but its strength is 0. I believe I would like to attempt to break this subroutine, because 3 net damage is very, very bad.
Keep in mind, if he only had 2 cards in hand, 3 net damage kills him.
So what I will do is I'm going to pay 3 credits to the bank to increase the strength of my ninja program to be 5 for this ice. And the second ability is break a sentry subroutine.
For how much?
For 1 credit. If my strength is equal to or larger than the strength of your ice, I can break it if it's the type that I could break. So I will then use Ninja's ability with 1 credit to break that ice.
So
ice subroutine. That 1 subroutine. If there are multiple, I would have to spend more to break each subroutine.
Alright, so he broke that subroutine, it doesn't happen, and he moves through the ice because there's no end to run. So now he's here again. Would you like to jack out now?
No, I would like to continue.
I'd like to continue forward. Alright, well I'm going to look at this card and go, oh yeah, I'm rezzing that. 8 credits to the bank, and I res Wall of Thorns. Wall of Thorns is a big baddie. It is a barrier ice. It has a strength of 5, and it has 2 subroutines. One is do 2 net damage, and one is end the run. Here's that end the run subroutine. If he doesn't break that, then it ends the run. He doesn't have the option to keep pushing through. So it's a barrier, so that ninja from before isn't going to do anything, because that's break sentry subroutine. However, what else do you have, Nam?
I have another icebreaker program, and it is called Corroder. It is a program that allows me to break barrier subroutines. So now I'm going to evaluate what do I want to do. So your ice is 5 strength. My Corroder only has 2 strength. But the trick here is that I can spend 1 credit to increase its strength by 1 for each credit that I spend. So what I'm going to do is spend, I have 4 credits left. I will spend 1, 2, 3 credits to make the strength of my Corroder 5, and that is then equal to your ice, and I can now interact with it.
Correct.
So, now I have 2 subroutines to potentially deal with. The first one is do 2 net damage, and the second one is end the run. I only have 1 credit left, and that's exactly how much it costs to break a barrier subroutine. However, I am too poor to break both of them, so now I have a choice. I am going to go ahead and allow this first subroutine to resolve. Do 2 net damage, because I want to see his R&D. So now I allow the corporation player to select 2 cards at random and discard them. So they're now discarded, and that part of the subroutine has been resolved. So now we go on to the next subroutine, end the run. I would not like that to happen. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use 1 credit to break that barrier subroutine. And now that subroutine does not resolve so that I can continue my run.
Now he has passed all the ice and he's about to access R&D. Keep in mind, I want to re-stress that Icebreaker's strength only lasts the length of the ice. So Corroder and Ninja are back to 0 and 2 respectively. There are some ice that will do differently, but Icebreakers that will do differently, but they will say so. Alright, so now he's going to access cards. He has the option again of jacking out beforehand. This may be important for remote servers where traps are involved, like he just took 2 net damage, and he's scared of a trap that may cause more net damage. So that could potentially kill him.
However, I know that right now it's just R&D, and I also had spent that card, the Maker's Eye, and I don't want that to go to waste. So I'm going to continue the run.
So now the runner is about to access cards from R&D. He played Maker's Eye, which requires him to access 2 additional cards. So that's going to be 3 cards. In this game, though, you only look at and resolve each one separately. We're only going to do them one at a time, so the first card is going to be revealed to the runner, and he accesses that card.
Okay. If I see an agenda, I can immediately score it. This is an agenda, so I will score it and get 3 agenda points. Now I access the next one. This is a piece of ice. There's nothing I can do to a piece of ice that I accessed from R&D, so this has to remain in his R&D.
After the end of the access phase, it's going to go back on top of the other one. The agenda's gone. It's going to go back on top of the other card unless that card gets trashed or stolen. Now, remember the golden rule. If the rules on a card state something different than the normal rules, that applies. Normally, the corporation does not see the card's access from R&D. However,
I have accessed this card. It's called Snare. Ambush. If Snare is accessed from R&D, the runner must reveal it. Oh no, corporation, I have found Snare.
Snare. Snare is an asset, also known as an ambush. This is a very special card, which is used as an example. Make sure to read the cards thoroughly. This card states, if you, and it's a corporation card, so you refers to the corporation. If you pay 4 credits when the runner accesses Snare, do 3 net damage and give the runner 1 tag. Ignore this effect if the runner accesses Snare from Archives. So Archives, if it was from Archives, it would have no effect. However, from R&D, from Headquarters, or from a remote server, because it is an asset, this card can go off. So if I have 4 money, and I pay it to the bank, the runner is going to take 3 net damage and 1 tag. Now, if you remember from before, I didn't have 4 money. So I have no money to trigger this. So the runner's just going to look at the 0 trash cost.
I'm going to trash that. I don't want that.
Trash it, and I have a tear in my eye. If I have 4 money, in our current situation, the runner had to discard from 4 to 2 cards. If I had the money, I would pay 4. The runner would take 3 net damage.
And there's only 2 cards in hand.
So now the runner cries because he just lost the game.
Well, I lose the game every day on a daily basis anyway.
Basic structure of a run. Let's look at another run just as an example. Over here on this remote server, there's 1 piece of ice protecting a card and another card. Well, so if he clears this server, he's going to get to look at 2 cards. It's unresed, but let's say the runner says, I want to make a run on this remote server.
Let's make a run on this remote server.
I have the choice of resing it, and I haven't replenished my money. Money is going to be important in this game. Keep in mind of that one action of gaining 1 money from the bank. You'll use it more often than you think. This one, I'm going to look at this ice. It costs 3 to res. I'm going to res it. And this one's special because it's the third basic type of ice. It's a code gate. Before we talked about the icebreakers that the runner had, he had a sentry breaker and a barrier breaker. So he has no code gate breaker. So these are going to happen, and he has no control over them happening. This is a strength 2, and it has 2 of them. The runner loses a click if able. So that means if he ran on his first, second, or third action, his next action he loses to this ice. And the second subroutine is end the run. So this 1 piece of ice with strength 2 just stopped him in his tracks because he can't break it. There is something he could have done. In his hand was the card.
So let's pretend I had, instead of approaching this ice, there was a special event card in my hand called Inside Job. I can make a run, but I bypass the first piece of ice encountered during this run. So whether it was face up or face down doesn't necessarily matter. I would pay 2 for the event, make the run as the embedded action for the resolution of Inside Job, And now I approach this first ice.
Since he's going to bypass the first piece of ice encountered, I could choose not to just res this and let him access it, and then the card really had no effect. But if I res it, I'm going to spend 3 to res that Enigma from before.
Or if it was already res on a previous run.
Or if it was already res, he would encounter it, but once he encounters it, it says, the next piece of ice encountered. He's going to take it and then bypass the subroutines. So he encounters it and then jumps it. And then he can access these cards. Again, he's going to access them one at a time. This one is...
I will access it. This is an upgrade for the server. And it does have the little trash can with value of 2. If I don't like it, I can pay the amount, 2 credits, to trash this card and put it in his archives.
And the second card is going to make me cry because it is...
The card is AstroScript Pilot Program. It's an agenda for 2 agenda points. And I score 2 agenda points.
That is a basic overview of running. I hope that can help you understand what's going on in the most complex aspect of the game. Keep in mind the golden rule for a game like this. If the text on a card directly defies a rule in the game, the card trumps the rules. It's basically the card itself is bending the rules to its will. We hope that this video is helping you learn all the intricacies of Netrunner. It does have a very large rule book in the box. Even though we covered most of these things, if you have any issues, there is an index in the back to help you find all the different aspects of the game in this book.
Glossary.
There's also a glossary. So the index is on page 34. That's going to help you a lot. There's also a glossary on page 30, which breaks down all of the different terms that are used in this rather flavorful thematic game. Final thing we want to go over is there's some great charts in the back. Keep in mind these are helpful supplements. They're not like the Bible of the rules. There are other things in the rule book and some things that we covered that aren't on these charts. But the charts will give you a general timing structure of your turns and a timing structure of runs. A very important thing on the turns, if you remember, I mentioned that the corporation can only score agendas on their turn. This chart shows that they can only score agendas as part of their turn by this little orange icon. There's also cards can be rezzed, and paid abilities can be triggered. Cards can be rezzed, all these purple icons here. This means the corporation can res cards on their board at any time during one of those points. For instance, you can't do it simultaneous with the runner doing an action, but directly afterwards you may be able to res a card. That only doesn't apply to ice. You're only allowed to res ice as the runner approaches them. But keep in mind, again, this is a game of a lot of hidden information, so you don't want to res the ice until the runner actually is about to encounter it. And then finally, paid abilities can be triggered. This is an important aspect that we didn't really go over in the rest of the game. On the cards, if there's an action icon there, if there's a click icon, you think of that as an extra option that you can take added to your action card. For instance, Magnum Opus, which was out here, but we really didn't cover, it's 1 click, gain 2 money. It's basically you're going to gain twice as much money from the bank as you would have if you just used your base function. Other actions, for instance, like the icebreaker actions, and then there are some other cards that give you action that will perhaps say 1 money : that is a paid ability, and you can do that at any time that paid abilities could be triggered. Another card in the runner's tableau that we really didn't go over is Sacrificial Construct. It's a resource, it's a remote, it has a little trash can and then the : prevent an installed program or an installed piece of hardware from being trashed. Say a program is about to go to the trash. You can instantly, in response, trash this card instead. The trash icon means that this card will go to the trash and its effect goes off as it goes to the trash. That's something to consider for paid abilities and other, as opposed to abilities with clicks attached. There are cards that allow you to spend clicks in the middle of another action. They will actually say spend a click. Anything that says click : much like the runner's action card, has to be done on one of your 4 if you're a runner, 3 if you're the corp turn actions.
That's the rough tutorial on how to play Android Netrunner. My name is Nam, and I'd like to thank our handy dandy cameraman. This is my brother Richard.
That is scary.
And this is our moral support friend Ryan over here.
Hi, Ryan. Hi. And then finally, I'm Jeremy. I'm also known on most forums as Malhaku. So if you're on the BGG forums or the card game database forums, that's who I am. We hope you enjoyed the tutorial. We hope it helps people learning to play the game. And signing off.
Welcome to this video. Quick shot, Ryan. Yeah, story time with Jeremy.
Blooper!
What we want to go over today is basics game.
Especially since the first aspect is access. The second access. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dude. It's determined with card destroy. I apologize. All right. Hello. Because they flatlined and died at their turn.
Oh crap! What is this footage of? Oh, this is garbage, right? Where was that footage that?
No, it's not very unique. It's a unique card.
Oh, diamond next to the name.
Diamond next to the name.
Oh, I was looking at this symbol.
No,
Okay.
the diamond next to the name.
You may want to re-record that. See, I
You didn't know that.
No, you just taught me something new.
Wow, you're so poor.
I'm a runner. Runners are poor.
Where's my armitage code, Busty? All right.
Where's my allowance? Hey, high five. Very nice.
Okay.
I like to jack in.
Don't say that.
Wait.
Two.